A Collin County grand jury indicted 18-year-old Karmelo Anthony with first-degree murder. He's accused of stabbing 17-year-old Austin Metcalf at a Frisco track meet earlier this year. Anthony was 17 at the time of the stabbing, and he's being tried as an adult.
Here's a problem that I have with this case. This case to me is open shut. I mean, it's literally so obvious that Karmelo Anthony killed this kid in cold blood. Two 17-year-olds go to a track meet, high school track meet, okay? Karmelo Anthony is not in the right section. Austin Metcalf says, hey, man, what's going on? You're not in the right section. Who are you? Blah, blah. Karmelo says, hey, you know what? Touch me, see what happens. A few short seconds later, Karmelo Anthony takes out a knife that he brings to school and stabs Austin and dies in his brother's arms. And for the black people out there that are screaming this was self-defense, how dare you? It is such a double standard in this country, because if a black person were to get killed by a white person, a white officer, CNN, MSNBC, ABC, NBC, everybody would be up in arms. You'll see Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton. You'll see all these people marching. But when you have a stone cold murderer and Karmelo Anthony killed this kid, it wasn't no self-defense. He took out he premeditated. He brought a knife to school. It wasn't like he was just getting jumped and he found something on the ground and used that. No, he brought a knife to school. What does that mean? That's premeditation. Brings a knife to school and kills this young man. Yet the black side are donating. The black people are donating to Karmelo Anthony's fund, so much so that he has hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars in this fund. Can you imagine that? We're going to donate to this kid who just killed this guy, who's claiming self-defense. You know, when I was an officer, I would hear people all the time. When I was a correctional officer, I would hear people all the time talk about, I want that person to rot in prison. Now, don't get me wrong. Prison is rough, for sure. It's disgusting. It's vile. It's gross, But rotting, how many times, how much, first of all, how many privileges inmates get? TVs, they have basketball tournaments. They have all these iPads. They have all these cool things in their cell. You would think, wait, how does an inmate have that? That's crazy. How? Well, they do that. They give them all these things. They give them all these luxuries and make sure that they're not killing themselves. They're not hurting other people, so they have all these luxuries. They give them whatever they want to in there. They're not rotting. You know how many times I've opened up a cell and then they would see their buddy getting out. Yo, what up, dude? Rotting. Now, I hope this kid gets life. He deserves life in prison. You're at the age right now, you're a young adult, you took this, you brought a knife. It wasn't like, again, you were getting jumped and you found something on the ground and you just said, hey, I'm just going to use this to protect myself. You would have an argument then. You literally premeditated. You brought this knife and you used it against someone, which tells me you anticipated something. You thought in your head, hey, look, I think something's going to happen. Let me just bring my knife to protect myself. This is going to be a very interesting case. To me, it should be easy. Guilty. It shouldn't take days and weeks and months and all this other stuff. As soon as this case starts, it should be, you did this, you brought this weapon to the track meet, this is what's going to happen to you. The jury shouldn't be deliberating for 2 weeks, and it shouldn't be any type of deliberation. You know what he did. There is no self-defense. Austin Metcalf and his family deserve justice. First of all, there's no amount of justice that's ever going to make the family whole. The kid was 17 years old. He had so much of his life still ahead of him. 17, didn't even graduate high school. And yet the parents have to go through hearing, people in the media talk about self-defense. How does that make you feel? If you're a mom and dad and your son was just murdered, and you have a whole bunch of people on CNN talking about, well, what if Austin started it? And maybe he deserved it because he started the fight. And Karmelo was just defending himself. How terrible is that to hear as a parent? Karmelo Anthony killed this kid in cold blood. It's not a racist thing. It is what it is. You know, I know the media is trying to twist this and say this and that. It's a black person killing a white person. And if it was a white person killing a black person, it would get so much media attention. The kid would get life for sure. He would be guilty before he even gets a court date if he was a white person killing a black person. But because it's a black person, it goes against the narrative of what CNN and MSNBC and all these people say. Because it's a black person killing a white person, it's, let me think. Maybe he was defending himself. It wasn't self-defense, guys. It was blatant murder. To me, this should be an easy case. Open shut. Karmelo Anthony should get life and spend the rest of his life in jail, in prison, for killing Austin. And hopefully that can give the parents some type of, hope in the judicial system and some type of hope, and say that, my son's killer got justice. And they can sleep better at night a little bit. Again, nothing's going to bring their child back. It's a terrible tragedy in this country, but a message needs to be sent to all these young people who think it's, okay to kill. All these young thugs that you have out in these streets that are doing all this crime. Karmelo Anthony is a young adult who made the conscious decision to bring a knife to school, take it out and use it against somebody, and then has the audacity to say self-defense. That's not flying. You're grown enough to bring a weapon to school. You're grown enough to use it. You're grown enough to spend the rest of your life in prison.